Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to another beautiful Sunday here on the Bear Family Homestead, as it were. We're looking around at kind of the gardens, the usual Sunday deal. But today I'm going to focus mostly on the perennials because last week I focused mostly on the annuals, and it's a two-part deal around here. So, brief cameo from the chickens perhaps, but otherwise, yeah, let's get looking at the perennial gardens we've got around the homestead. Speaking of chicken cameos, I guess we'll just start by the chickens today, who of course always have their bit to say whenever the camera comes out. Yeah, they do. Speaking of which, I have a chicken-related question to do an update on the farm channel. Anyway, today is a perennial gardening, and this is the little tiny smoky Saskatoon we brought with us in a 3-gallon bucket in the back of a U-Haul moving truck that has finally started to produce some serious amounts of fruit. Oh, look at that. And these particular Saskatoons, Shocks and I have both noticed, they're a lot more blueberry-like. So I suspect I'm going to be doing a lot of focusing on my attempts of air layering Saskatoons to get these ones because they are big and juicy. I mean, I like the ones up front that kind of came with the property, but I do have a certain sentimental attachment, let's find a sunny spot, to these ones that we brought with us all the way from the semi-permaculture garden all those years ago, right? And actually, on that note, we're going to get back to semi-permaculture gardening, but in a much bigger way in the coming days and weeks and months, because I have some large things I can turn into incredibly large planters. But like I say, that's a whole different conversation. Still makes me sad, but we do have some peas growing, but that is annual gardening. Okay, let's just continue to groove around here. We have the gooseberry. This little guy was also part of the semi-permaculture garden collection. Spent a very long time living in a 3-gallon bucket. This year we have some amazing upward growth. So I think we're actually going to see it's 4 feet in height in the next couple years. It's definitely starting to spread out, and we're seeing that in its width. But one thing I'm finding really interesting is those of you who watch all the channels might remember we had some ground squirrels. I thought they were gophers showing up last year. We have a family of them. I say it's a family because I've seen 2 adults playing here at the same time, and I saw 6 young ones playing all around the gooseberry, and they were climbing up here and hanging on the rock and looking all majestic and like trying to do the Simba Mufasa thing. But they haven't been eating the gooseberry bush itself, nor are they the reason that the berries seem to keep disappearing, because I mean, here we have couple beautiful examples of unripe gooseberries. You have to remember this variety does turn purple, but they are huge, and I haven't seen any of the ground squirrels going for any of these berries yet, so that's fine. What I do see them eating is things like tall grasses, like this thing up in front will probably be gone in the next couple of days. I see them eating the dandelions and the broadleaves and stuff, and I ask myself, why do so many people have a problem with these things in their gardens if they're just gonna trim the verge and eat the weeds? I mean, people talk about them eating their flowers, but we have some ground squirrels up front that don't seem to have done much to Shocks's flowers. The wandering turkeys seem to be doing more damage, but even they are pretty much just there for the sunflowers. Anyway, let's look at some more perennials here. We got more gooseberries. These are the ones that I planted out from the air layering experiment last year, and as you can see, a lot of them did take and do very, very well. We have an open patch in the middle where they didn't take. However, Shar brought us home some, I want to get the name right, Honey Queen raspberries. I believe they're a goldeny, yellowish type raspberry. So I'm really excited to see how those do. And it's kind of convenient that we had this empty spot in the middle, because now the raspberries can just kind of do their thing spreading out from there. And I've got my layer of gooseberries in the middle here and all the way along the side here. And then what I'm thinking, just to keep adding to the perennial nature of this garden patch, is next spring I'm going to get a boatload of Kent strawberries, and they're $1 each when they're basically bare root cuttings. But we have to go super early to the green spot in Brandon, April, I believe they said. And yeah, maybe put a whole row of them along that side where the straw is now, right? I told you I was doing an experiment, strawberries. And then maybe all the way along the back where I have an equal sized straw barrier, and then we can have a ground layer of growth catching the solar energy, producing fruit, and we've got a medium 4 foot layer of growth catching the sun there, and then we'll have those 6-foot-ish canes of the raspberries in the middle. Really good utilization of the sun, I think. And this year, for kind of ground cover stuff, I've got a few weeds that are growing in there. I see some maples, but I sprinkled a bunch of radishes in here, and what was the other thing? Hamburg rooted parsley maybe, but I don't see any of that growing. But either way, the radishes, if I do get anything out of them, and we have these darn flea beetles here, so they're kind of problematic. I'm going to eat those for the pods anyway, so let the roots stay in the ground. Long-term carbon, it's all part of my long-term gardening, goes with the perennials. But anyway, so that's the swale garden that has turned into a gooseberry swale, and it's looking pretty good, I think. Well, I guess next would be this glorious monster here. This is the honeyberry, and it has been absolutely ravaged by mostly waxwings. A lot of robins in there, and the LBBs, but gangs of waxwings just flying through here. So yeah, no honeyberries left, and over here, no haskaps left on that either. But that's life. Continuing our tour of fun perennial stuff. Look at this. I still think these are red currants. I lost the tag. It might be at the bottom of all this underneath the mulch. Kind of hoping to find it because this is going to be getting moved. We have a few little clones off of it over here, and I've got another one that I've already planted on the side of the yard, and this is what's going to be the first thing to go back into the semi-permaculture garden. But I am waiting until these beauties have ripened up for me, because these are so nice, tart little red currants. If you've had a red currant, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't had a red currant, you should fix that problem. But this thing has done incredibly well. However, in its current location, so bad, in its current location, it gets bashed off of the banister there, or the porch railing, really quite badly, and the leaf cutters seem to be just having a heyday in here. So I think when I move it into the bottom of the white, well, it was going to be a rain barrel, but now it's going to be a planter, and resurrect the semi-permaculture garden, it will do a lot better without that wall to smash up against, and get better sunshine all the way around it. So yeah, that red currant, that again, traveled with us from BC. Little tiny $4 bush, because, clearance. I love buying permaculture on clearance. But it has grown. It has grown significantly. Because I'd say, really, when we did buy it at that $4 price, it was probably about the size of, glare. Yeah, there we go. Probably about the size of these guys here. It was not a big plant. And I have already successfully planted something about this size on the fruit line for the fence line, and it seems to have taken. So we'll get to that in a few minutes, because, perennials, permaculture, fun stuff. But yeah, so I guess technically if I wanted to score it, I've got $12 worth of red currants there. But that assumes that I would be selling them, and that's just not how Mr. Bear gardens. I have too many places where I can put perennial food before I'm selling it. Maybe long term though, and that is again why this is going to be one of the first reintroductions to the semi-permaculture thing, because I want to make sure I can take it with me, because I have big plans for red currant bushes in my future. Moving up front, we've got those apple trees. Neither of these are the grafted variety that was supposed to be growing off them. They're clearly growing from the rootstock. This is a super abundant crab apple, though. Little tiny apples, but it produces each and every year for us. As compared to its neighbor, which is more of a masting variety, I think it's called. And this will produce every 2 to 3 years. But when it does, it's a bumper crop. Like, I have been pulling apples off of this thing to give the larger ones kind of a fair shake at life, and by the time the fruit is ready, these little branches are it's gonna be looking like a willow. They'll be almost touching the ground. It gets so heavy. But I have learned, silly things that I learn in the kitchen, if I take these when they're ripe and run them through a cheese grater and then do the same with some mango slices, I can turn that into a really interesting, not exactly marmalade, but it's got the same kind of texture, and it is just amazing. And because they're like a crab apple variety, or at this size they might be apple crabs, there's so much pectin in here, you don't even have to add anything to it, because you're not really looking for something solid, right? You're looking for a smooth spreading sort of, it's so good. I do think I did a video on that in the Bear in the Kitchen channel, so if you're interested, you should probably check that out. But while we're up front, we've also got the Saskatoons that were here when we moved. Oh, I recognize those things on Google Earth. When we were initially thinking about buying this property, we lived, like 1,800 kilometers away. So we did some Google Earth research, looking at where the gardens had been and how they have been. And I was looking at these 2 little bushes in the front going, oh, those are Saskatoons. Oh, those are Saskatoons. And I was not wrong. We've been really lucky this year. I mean, there are a lot of little dried ones on there. But from what I've heard from other Saskatoon growers in the area, a lot of their berries have just plain dried up. Not really having that problem with these bushes. And I think we're unlikely to have that problem with these bushes. It's kind of a dip in the yard that kind of goes down to the base of it there. And with the trees we've got in the background, some of those still going to come down. It gets good afternoon shade, it gets a nice break. So that said, we don't get too many of these Saskatoons, regardless of how abundant they are, because of waxwings and robins and LBBs and a host of other little birds like American goldfinch, super bright yellow finches. They are gorgeous. They look like canaries, but they're not. They're a type of finch, according to Brother Troll. I believe he told me exactly what they were quite a while ago. Valuable source of information you are, brother, and I thank you for all of your assistance over the years. Anyway, so this is the Saskatoons up front, just doing fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. So let's go check on the fruit line along the edge that we're using as kind of a fence line for now. So we'll just do kind of a quick run down the fruit line here. The plan here ultimately is tree, bush, tree, bush, all the way down, creating, just an edible sort of fence line, because there's no fence here, right? So this is the little Romeo cherry that we got this year. I'm really liking the 4 stumps in the corners and the straw coverage there. This seems to be doing quite well, adapting quite well. And then next tree, got the Mont Royal plum. Looking a little sad, but it's hot today, so that makes a certain amount of sense. All in all, though, it has transferred really well. No fruit this year, but it's our first year with it. Not a surprise. Looking good, though. And then moving to where I said in the middle, right, on to berry bushes and such. This is what I was saying with one of the little red currant transfers. It's been in there for probably a month now. Seems to be doing, quite well. It's not huge or anything. And my biggest concern is, how is that going to survive its first winter? But we learn together, don't we? Then moving back, we've got that weird little 3 variety pear tree we picked up. Still can't believe we brought this thing home in a Ford Fusion. That said, it has grown a little bit since then, but no pears at all this year. There were a lot of blossoms at the start of the year, but the weather's been weird. And we have an old heritage pear tree in town. Every year this thing produces massive numbers. And this year, not one fruit. So I don't blame our tree here for a lack of production this year so much as I blame the weather. But you know, global warming. I'm not even getting into that. Anyway, we've got a little tiny rhubarb here. This thing is probably going to get moved to a new location. This thing is several years old, and it's just tiny. Clearly not happy. Good perennial, but clearly not happy. And then back here we've got, this is the Ben Conan black currant that we picked up this year. Hopefully, Mark, yours arrived safely. I don't know, stupid mail delays and stuff, but we've had a few fruit off of this thing so far. And we can see in there's almost ripe ones. And I have got a couple cuttings left, because the goal here is to do, in these first berry bushes, I'm going to do red currant, black currant, red currant, black currant, just kind of alternating all the way. And yeah, like I said, it's an edible fence line. This still has to come out for a tree. Don't know what we're going to put in there yet, but snakes love it, so we leave it. And then back here we have the Juliet cherry. Romeo and Juliet did end up getting separated, but better that than a tragic suicide scene. Since we've been watering this, I'm starting to see a lot better survival rate on the cherries. Really appreciate the neighbors, the property owners there, letting us use the well. And on that note, I have made an offer to potentially purchase that. So we'll see when they get back to me on that. But this Juliet cherry's been down for a few years, is starting to grow, and it's nice to see the production. Alright, well, it sounds like the tenant next door has got some fun going on in the backyard there, so I'm going to boot scoodle and make it a wrap for this one. But thank you all for joining me as we look around at most of the perennial gardens this year. And I don't know, maybe next week we'll take a look at what's going on with the aquaponics, because it's been a while, and that aloe vera is still doing surprisingly well. So yeah, maybe next week we'll take a look at the aquaponic garden, and we won't have to worry what the neighbors are doing. Until then, much love, everybody. Take care of yourselves and go have fun outside. But remember, stay hydrated. It's kind of warm these days.